Have you ever felt the cold grip of dread, so palpable it seems to clutch at your very soul? That was the sensation Dr. Andrew McAllister experienced the moment he stepped into St. Vincent's Asylum, a decrepit hospital long abandoned and forgotten. The building loomed like a skeletal giant, its windows shattered and its walls covered in creeping ivy and rust. The air was thick with the scent of decay and mold, a morbid reminder that this place had been left to rot for decades. Andrew had come here on a dare, a foolish bet made during a night of drunken bravado with his colleagues. They had laughed, swigging their beers and egging him on, but now, standing alone in the dimly lit foyer, he could hardly remember what had possessed him to accept the challenge. The floorboards creaked under his weight as he moved deeper into the hospital. Rusty instruments lay scattered across dusty gurneys, their once sterile surfaces now marred by the passage of time. The flickering beam of his flashlight revealed eerie shadows that danced on the peeling walls, creating the illusion of movement in the periphery of his vision. Andrew's heart raced as he approached the first of many decrepit wards. The door, hanging off its hinges, groaned in protest as he pushed it open. Inside, the remnants of a once bustling medical facility were frozen in time. Beds with rusted frames and stained mattresses lined the walls, and a faint, almost imperceptible whisper seemed to emanate from the darkness. He shook his head, trying to dispel the unnerving feeling. "Just the wind," he muttered to himself, though he knew it was a lie. The air was too thick, too still for any breeze to penetrate these forsaken halls. Andrew took a deep breath and pressed on, determined to spend the night here as promised. His footsteps echoed through the corridors, each step amplifying the silence that seemed to swallow all sound. He passed by a series of operating rooms, their doors ajar, revealing rusty surgical tools and cracked tiles stained with what looked like dried blood. In one of the rooms, he paused, his flashlight illuminating an old hospital bed in the center. The bed was covered in a tattered sheet, and something about the way it was draped sent a shiver down his spine. He hesitated, then slowly pulled back the sheet, revealing a grotesque sight. The skeletal remains of a patient lay shackled to the bed, the bones discolored and brittle with age. The skull's empty eye sockets seemed to stare directly at him, as if silently pleading for release. Andrew recoiled, bile rising in his throat. He backed out of the room, his mind racing with thoughts of who this person had been and what horrors they had endured. He tried to convince himself it was just an unfortunate soul left behind in the chaos of the hospital's closure. But deep down, he felt there was something more sinister at play. As he continued his exploration, he couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The sensation grew stronger with each passing moment until he found himself standing in front of a door labeled morgue. His hand trembled as he reached for the handle, a sense of morbid curiosity compelling him to enter. The morgue was colder than the rest of the hospital, the temperature dropping noticeably as he stepped inside. Metal drawers lined the walls and a few were left open, revealing decayed bodies in various stages of decomposition. The stench was overwhelming, and Andrew covered his nose and mouth with his sleeve, fighting the urge to gag. In the center of the room stood an autopsy table, its surface stained with the remnants of countless procedures. As his flashlight beam swept across the room, it caught a glint of something metallic on the floor. He bent down to pick it up, realizing it was a small rusted key. A sudden noise behind him made him whirl around, his heart pounding in his chest. The sound had come from one of the open drawers. He approached it cautiously, the flashlight shaking in his hand. The drawer was labeled with a faded tag that read, "Patient 426. Taking a deep breath, he pulled the drawer open further, revealing a body covered in a stained sheet. With a sense of dread, he lifted the sheet, exposing the corpse's face. The skin was pale and waxy, the eyes closed as if in a peaceful slumber. But as Andrew's gaze traveled down the body, he froze in horror. Carved into the chest, deep and deliberate, was a single word: leave. Panic surged through him, and he stumbled back, dropping the key. The morgue seemed to close in around him, the walls pressing in as if trying to trap him within. He had to get out, now! He sprinted down the corridor, past the operating rooms and wards, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The hospital seemed to come alive with sinister whispers and faint footsteps echoing his own. He didn't dare look back, fearing what he might see. Finally, he reached the foyer, the exit just within reach. But as he pushed open the door, he was met with a sight that made his blood run cold. Standing in the doorway was a figure, tall and shrouded in darkness. Its eyes glowed with a malevolent light, and a twisted smile spread across its face. Andrew tried to scream, but no sound escaped his lips. The figure reached out, its hand cold and clammy against his skin. The last thing he saw before darkness consumed him was the figure's face, contorted into a grotesque mockery of a human smile. When Andrew's colleagues returned the next day, they found the hospital exactly as it had been, abandoned, silent, and decaying. There was no sign of Andrew, except for his flashlight lying on the floor of the foyer. The battery's long dead. But in the morgue, on the autopsy table, lay a fresh body, a single word carved into its chest: stay. The legend of St. Vincent's Asylum grew that day, and the hospital remained a place of fear and dread. A reminder that some places are better left undisturbed, and those who dared to enter would find themselves lost to the darkness, their fates sealed by the malevolent presence that haunted its halls.